investigations. Some of them were persecuted when they were making breakthroughs leading to the politicians who were involved, both in Richmond and up the North Coast. And we worked with them. I mean, we had completely trumped up, especially in Richmond. Okay, so I've had that relationship with police over the years when they were working, including when they were working in teams. Some of them came to me and said, well, I'm leaving, I can't take it anymore because they weren't getting recognition, the atmosphere was toxic. I also, through the media reports, integrated media reports. My research methodology is very varied. It's kind of academic, media, and personal. And also to phone people and get very specific information. Okay, and that's just carried on, basically. So at the moment, if we say, what I'm using in this is that the first-hand reports I get from people in communities who've had experience of political threat, political killings, not just political, widespread. I'm dealing with quite a few people whose land is at risk, and one very prominent member, for example, Mama Nhlanhla at Somkela was killed, just like the guy, not the same. So I deal with people at community level who don't get any help from the police. They say the police are corrupt. I follow up cases. I put whatever I can on record so that I have a check. And that's how I get to know if phone numbers don't work, if emails bounce back, etc. So my sources are varied. But in terms of this, I've spoken to police members who've been in the task team, especially at the beginning, and normally they were booted out if they started to make breakthroughs, they told me. I mean, a couple of them arrested people. I mean, and I want to say this right now because he hasn't had the recognition. You know that the people who are boosting the task team are saying, oh, we've got all these successes, and they keep coming back to the conviction of Interior, the accused number 5 in the Miwa case. Okay, that conviction was 6 life sentences, and it was obtained by Warrant Officer Makubu, who was in the Hawks. He was briefly a very experienced man with a stack of convictions. He was briefly sent to the task team, who moved him out. They wanted to move him out, he said, before he finished, but he did. He had a good prosecutor working with him. He got those 6 life sentences and a whole string of other dozens. So it's basically, he has never been given that. And I want to say it publicly. He is the one, not the task team per se, that got those 6 life sentences they keep boasting about. He's also the one who opened the second docket in the Miwa case, by the way, because he can see who the real killers are, and his life is at threat at the moment. I'm saying this publicly. There's been attempts on his life. That's what happens to good police. And these are the people I work with and help if I can, as well as what I get from all sorts of policing sources that I cannot verify.
So it's a networks of various sources.
Yep.
And also, it sounds to me, some whistleblowers, people who have been dismissed, they claim unfairly or unjustly, and they come and complain to you, and of course you also follow the media reports and speak to some people directly.
Yes.
Have you actually appeared in court as an expert witness other than in commissions of inquiry? I think you assisted in Goldstone and...
I did give evidence to the Goldstone Commission, I'm pretty sure. Yes, I did. I remember going to the North Coast.
I want to request you that you speak through the microphone.
Oh, sorry, Sorry, yes. Sorry, of course I must. It's just the inbred sort of social interaction, but it's different in a formal situation. Okay. Yes, I gave evidence to the Goldstone Commission. And I've given evidence in court. I was some of you're probably not old enough to remember, but in 1980, when was it? 1990, after the ANC was disbanded and the violence had escalated, KwaZulu government wanted to legalize the carrying of traditional weapons. And the Legal Resources Centre, the attorney was Chris Nicholson, who became a judge. Their advocate was Advocate Chaskelson, and the judge was a very famous Liberal judge called Judge Didcot. It was quite a case. I was the expert witness showing that these were weapons of war, not weapons of peace. So I gave evidence in that. And I've given other evidence, for example, in a case we did on land issues that we thought we might get to concord with, but the government opposed us and we didn't bother. And that was about land ownership and cultural identity. And I've given evidence in more than one case. As I've given a few evidence as a social worker in occasional cases. I don't do that anymore. But I've given evidence in mitigation of witchcraft sentences because I'm an anthropologist and we're the, as one sociologist said, the experts in the irrational. So I have given evidence. I mean, that's what I can remember off the top of my head, yes, in courts.
Thank you. Dr. Das, then just on paragraph 18, I just want to isolate some of the paragraphs that appear in your article. At the bottom of page 18, you says, my work, among other things, confirms the close links between political and taxi violence in the province, with taxi hitmen often deployed in political attacks. It is a cause for great concern that despite the availability of information about such activities, little progress has been made in bringing perpetrators to justice. And then on page 19, the next paragraph, you refer to what has also been mentioned before the Honourable Committee in May 2018. President Cyril Ramaphosa formed the National Interministerial Investigative Team drawn from different parts of the country to investigate the killings. And you say its work has stirred controversy. Amid allegations, it has been selective when making arrests. Questions have been raised about the quality of its investigations, which have had little impact on exposing those behind the violence. And so you've become quite a critic of the PKTT, as it is called, and we're going to deal with that in a bit more detail. On page 20, you also accuse their work of not being transparent. You say the Interministerial Task Team investigating the political killing started work on over 100 dockets in mid-2018. Over a year later, the only known high-profile conviction for any of the 90 murders I documented was secured by the KwaZulu-Natal detectives in March 2019 for a 2016 murder. There may have been other convictions for the murders of less-known victims in regional courts which have not been reported, but none have been reported for the many prominent victims during this period. Can you assist us in ascertaining, determining what is described as a political killing? Is there any criteria that one can use?
Well, I define my criteria. I call them politically linked because it's the position occupied by the person, and the motive I don't know, because I call them politically linked. I use the defining criteria, which I've refined over the years. It was quite easy back in the 80s and 90s. You could see the conflict was between, or sometimes within enrichment, it was within the party. But it's become a lot more difficult to actually say what a political killing is. It does often, though. So as a result, I define my criteria, which is, well, you have to occupy a position like a councillor or a senior member of a party, as in the branch executive. And I've included senior municipal people because often they're caught up in a web of corruption in municipalities. But I do go out of my way to say actually, until the case comes to court, and the evidence is led in court and assessed, you can then start saying, well, is the motive political, or was he having an affair with someone's wife, or has he got a taxi business or a security business? I mean, that's not political per se, but so, and I know this because over 20 years ago, I served on a small committee which was established by then Minister Tweti, because the white farmers, does this sound familiar, were saying they were getting targeted for political racist reasons. And we had all the cooperation we needed from ministers, police. We talked to prosecutors, investigators, everything, victims, families, even prisoners in prison. We did everything we could, and there was a high solving rate, and we actually found no, we couldn't find a motive. Now, that's how difficult it is to say, well, how do you know this is a motive? You need a court case to start with. So I say politically linked. And my problem with the task team is that I have never known how they define the cases. I have heard they've taken dockets that have got nothing, as far as I know, to do with politics. I have no idea what the base they're working from. So it's impossible to say X percentage of it. You have to start with the universe. You know, who are you describing? Where are the dockets? Even now, I'm battling to work it out because I don't know which dockets they took and which didn't. And the figures have tended to shift somewhat over the years.
Thank you. Now, can I refer you to your affidavit, your statement, paragraph 11. I want to just refer to your engagement, as it were, with former Minister Kele, and also the communication you had with then Provincial Commissioner Mkhwanazi.
Yeah. Okay. I had complained to the Portfolio Committee, everything should be on record with them, about Clearly's involvement in operational matters, which I knew he was involved in. Everybody knew he was involved in. I mean, if you talk to people who've had experience, I mean, when I tried to find out, when some relatives of a man who'd been arrested told me that their relatives were all getting abused by this task team to try and get them to make statements. These were people who contacted me. I met with them. They told me about it. And I said, okay, well, who is heading the task team? They didn't know. They gave me a name that I phoned, and it was a policeman who said, well, he was with the task team and he wasn't anymore. And I said, well, who's running it? And he said, oh, Clearly's running it. Oh, okay, well, that I'm not surprised about because, you know, I know I've heard that otherwise. The other thing I know he's running it is that in the Magaka case, Sindisa Magaka, I know this from crime intelligence itself, but it was leaked to the media, not by me, that crime intelligence had supplied the money for the guns that attacked 3 people, ANC people in Umzimkhulu, and 1 died. It was Sindisa Magaka. Okay, now that report was somehow leaked to the media. And it transpired, and I checked this out, it transpired that the head of intelligence at the time had given the report to Clearly, which is not his operational role. The head of intelligence is supposed to give it to the National Commissioner, and he didn't do that. And the National Commissioner said public in the media he didn't know anything about it. I mean, I've never asked him about it, but I can believe it, because if you also, I don't know if it's included in this, but it's even on the internet, or it was. It's a protected disclosure by former Deputy Minister Vuma, General Vuma, Deputy National Commissioner, and she talks about how Clearly was constantly interfering and trying to get this procured and that procured. She was investigating. She says in her protected disclosure, she said she was investigating corruption, and then Masemola was told to get rid of her, and she was suspended. I think she's not back. So, I mean, it was, and I complained to Parliament about it. I said he shouldn't be running this team himself. And the former late Honourable Chairperson said, no, of course he shouldn't be running itself. But she said, we talked to him about it, but of course nothing was done. Because if I talk to people who've experienced the task team, they say that he was seen with Khumalo. So I just wanted to investigate it. Okay, now, then what happened is in 2021, I have known Tabiso Zulu since he was at high school. He did some research for me at one stage. And he, of course, got into big trouble. I said to him, he went to the Morani Commission to tell them what happened to Sindisa Magaka. I said to him, don't stick your neck out. And he did. No, he said, I've got to do it. And then the problem started. He got security threat assessments from the police. Even the public protector said he was to have protection, and he didn't get it. Clearly took it on review. He refused. Tabiso was almost killed, just narrowly missed being killed in 2019. And then the police started harassing him and maliciously charging him. And he's been in hiding most of the time. Right. In 2021, he called me because the political task team had come to him and said, oh, we're investigating this case you opened, which wasn't even a political case, it was an assault case. And then they'd use that as a pretext to seize his 2 cell phones. They didn't produce a court order. Then they maliciously charged him again. When he got the cell phones back after my intervention, including speaking personally to Khumalo and writing a letter to Mkhwanazi about it and copying it to Parliament, nothing ever happened.
That's MDH 5.1 on page 23. That's the letter to Mkhwanazi, 11 October 2021.
It sounds like it.
And
I don't have to.
MDH 5.2, which is on page 27, addressed to the Honourable Chair and members of the Parliamentary Police Committee.
Yes. I also, at one stage, I thought I'd did an affidavit because somebody was going to investigate it. None of the cases Tabiso Zulu opened, and there's evidence, especially in the attempted murder, none have ever got to court. And it's a political case if you try to shoot a political whistleblower. Yeah.
So, and General Mkhwanazi himself, did you ever respond to you?
Not in this matter that I recollect. The only time I've written a lot of letters to him about what's happening. I think I got one response from him, but because I sent him, I think I'd have to check back, quite frankly, but I have sent him a lot of letters, including about what happened in July 21, when he wasn't around. He was nowhere to be found, not even on the phone, while the place was looted and burning. Okay, now, I have written a lot to him, and the only letter I can, off the top of my head, reply, I remember sending him pictures of some armed security guards with rifles in one of the towns. And I said, you better check. I think I sent him the pictures and said, are these people allowed to carry guns like this? And I never heard another word, but I think he indicated that he would investigate it, but it was years ago now. But I also put on record with Parliament in 2020, a couple of years back before the last Parliament changed, that clearly was going around telling people that I heard from police that they were not supposed to talk to me. So maybe Mkhwanazi had orders from clearly not to talk to me.
Now, Dr. Das, can we just move on to some of the reasons why you demanded the disbandment of the PKTT, and you deal with that from paragraph 15 onwards on page 10 of your statement.
Yes. May I just go back, though, because directly informing that is under 13.1. The abuses that people independently were reporting to me, which was part of my motivation at that stage,
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought they were catalogued in those.
Oh, okay. Well, I can include that.
But maybe highlight them. Maybe highlight 13.1, 13.2, 13.3, and 13.4.
Yeah, okay. There was the emotional and physical abuse, the use of tubing. I mean, a lot of police do it, but it's almost a norm from what everybody who encountered the task team spoke of. But also emotional, psychological abuse, which they tended to use more with the policemen they targeted than the physical abuse, because maybe they were a bit more empowered. But the emotional abuse was extreme. I've listened to it. I've heard about having to get psychiatric help. It's very clearly spelled out in information given to me by a man called Ronald Pillay, who refused to give false evidence against Mzintli. Mzintli is in one of the first 3 case studies I sent. Mzintli was a former MK member, actually, who was for years a senior road traffic inspector in the Lower South Coast. He reported corruption, and he reported the alleged real killers of the speaker, Wandile Mkhize. And he was then targeted, and eventually he was charged with fairly minor charges of, when I say fairly minor compared with murder, charges of defeating the ends of justice. So he had a gun that was his deceased brother's, he didn't even know was in a suitcase. He was kept for 5.5 years without bail on those charges. They tried to poison him in prison, so he was obviously very unpopular. And then he was released in May this year on the section of the Criminal Procedure Act, which withdraws the charges for lack of evidence. 5.5 years without bail. That was an extreme case. Now, Ronald Pillay was a colleague in the road traffic department, and they'd come to him and said, "We want you to do this, sign a statement implicating him." And he said, "I won't do it, I won't do it." And he gave me an affidavit about how even this prosecutor that I complained about had tried to force him to do it. He made an affidavit, and he said they kept harassing him. They would come and search his house without a warrant. His house was even set on fire once. He doesn't know it was them. And then they caused him to lose his job by supplying false evidence. So he was persecuted psychologically rather than physically. The other one is almost a norm, it seems, and this is, I've been told by virtually everyone I've interacted with, they just come in and search without a warrant. They don't produce an order when they take our phones. This was common. This was a common allegation. I mean, this is illegal. And I mean, the fact that I reported to Parliament the illegal seizure of a phone without a court order, and they were still allowed to carry on doing it. And that's what they did do. Okay, the fabrication of evidence. I mean, this is a serious problem. I mean, there's a case now involving 2 policemen, a sergeant and a constable with clean records, in a station called Umkomaas, south of Durban. 3 years ago, they were on patrol one night, and they stopped a car that turned out to have armed hitmen with AK-47s. You see, they were all hyped up. He thought they were on Muti and going to kill a hit. Okay. They were going to get an excellence. They booked the guns in, they booked the prisoner in. They were going to get an excellence award, but they get arrested. In fact, the way they describe it was one of the Kumalas, there's lots of Kumalas in this team, lots of them. One of the Kumalas rocked up driving Mkhwanazi's BMW, apparently. So Mkhwanazi, instead of giving them an excellence award, was kind of colluding with the police who wanted to arrest them. Okay, they were arrested. They were charged initially. The only political killings that they could muster was the killing of a councillor in Margate, which is a good hour's drive from Umkomaas. And they were on duty that night. And there are OB entries, AVL entries, cell phone records to show they were in Umkomaas doing their job. That charge has never been withdrawn. They then manufactured another 3, which weren't even political, okay, that they killed one night, apparently. They've got alibis for that. They've got alibis for that night. But the state drags its case out, on and on and on. They refused bail on grounds, I've seen the bail hearing transcript. The state finally finished its case 3 years later, wasting days and days of court time that they are paying for, their families are paying for. No evidence whatsoever produced to support the bail argument and let them out on bail. We're looking at that case now and how we can help them, because they deliberately delayed the hearings again for another 6 months. I don't know why the lawyer didn't apply for a withdrawal of the charges, because the state, according to a relative of theirs, which is a senior policeman, the state had not produced any evidence to support the charges. So, I mean, these are the stories I was getting, and the fabrication of evidence was a common theme. I mean, like the Dlamini case that the Honourable Adams has been pursuing. And he said, I mean, even that, somebody said, I got my information about Magaka, I think it was to the Nhlanhla Commission from Adams. And I've been working with Thabiso Zulu since the 90s. That's where I knew about Magaka. Anyway, but Adams said to me when I finally did speak to her, which was quite recently, I'd only copied him some of the stuff to the committee. And he said to me, you know, I can't even sleep at night thinking of what happened to that poor man. This is Dlamini. Another one who was seconded to the task team, and one of the convictions they got was his work too, and he was investigating Magaka and some of the other convictions they got, and he's been sitting in prison for 5 years because, well, his story was, there were a couple of cases he was doing, one involving an Ngoma case that they were unhappy about, but these are his words, and he must give evidence himself. He said to me when I managed to speak to him, he said, well, along comes Khumalo and says, I must arrest Zandile Gumede. Zandile Gumede is the mayor of Durban, and she's already facing charges for corruption. I've got to arrest her for killing her husband. He said, but I can't do that. I've got no evidence to arrest her for killing her husband. I can't arrest without evidence. And these are his words. So he says, Khumalo says to me, I don't care whether you've got evidence. He said, the minister wants her arrested. He wants it in the media. These are Dlamini's words to me. He must give it himself to Nhlanhla Commission. But he was unpopular enough to be charged with defeating the ends of justice. And a policeman who refused to support it also got charged with defeating the ends of justice. They're still sitting in prison 5 years later. So you can see why I was up in arms. I'm hearing horror stories, human suffering, dreadful stuff. Yeah.
But Dr. de Haas, are these stories that you're hearing, they anecdotal? But is there some independent source, or how are these stories verified? If at all?
I can only talk to people directly and corroborate. Like, for example, one of the cases I was linked to, I spoke to people in the community who were all saying, no, they've arrested the wrong people. The two brothers who knew who the right killers were killed themselves because they went to the police for the information. And I've spoken to people in the community, including a man who was told me how he was tortured, tubed. Very scared, very scared. Some people are too scared. I've tried to verify everything. I obviously can't. I mean, how can I check whether they're guilty or not? I can't until the case goes to court. And they're dragging it out. They're dragging these cases out. Some of the police, like one of the relatives is a policeman who's verified everything that is real, you know, and other people who've also kind of experienced of the task team said, well, that's what they do, and this is what. Oh, in the case that Dlamini, the councillor that Dlamini had actually arrested, the charges were withdrawn. So, I mean, that is concrete stuff when charges are withdrawn. I can't verify. I have said to all these people, I've seen stuff they've written, because some of them have actually written stuff to the Public Protector, Justice Department. So that's the best I could do to verify, quite frankly. I want them to talk themselves.
These court cases, do you monitor them?
I see.
Are you able?
Yes, as far as I can, especially the Bagaka case. I've been monitoring that since the very beginning.
Honorable Ngola.
No, thanks, Chair. Chair, the witness has made a concession that there are many Kumalos in the police service and staff. So if we can plead with the witness to be specific when mentioning people's names. If the witness is referring to Mkhwanazi, there are numerous Mkhwanazis. If they're going to Kumalo,
yeah,
there are many.
A copy of that note there, and he was apparently, the investigator was also called Mkhwanazi, and he was no longer in the police. I think that's the only other Mkhwanazi that I personally have come across. So when I say it is definitely General Mkhwanazi, the person I spoke to after Thabiso's phone was seized was General Dumisani Khumalo. Quite difficult to know. I think it was a Captain Khumalo, but there's a sergeant one who arrested these Unkomas police. I've probably got it in my notes at home. Yeah.
Perhaps, now that you've mentioned him, perhaps talk to us about Lieutenant General, I think, Dumisani Khumalo.
Okay.
He was the project leader of
the project leader, yeah. As far as I know. And I've heard this from more than one source, and it may have even come up in Parliament, because I had a very good friend of mine who's now deceased. It was called, we worked together from the early 90s. He'd also, I think, MK, Philip Mhlongo. Philip was an ANC cadre who then moved to COPE, and then moved, I think, to the EFF. He was representing the EFF in the Portfolio Committee. And Philip told me that he had a call. He was very proactive, the late Philip Mhlongo. And the police had contacted him from Operational Response in Pretoria because General Dumisani, no, he was Brigadier then. Brigadier Dumisani Khumalo was acting head of he said acting head of ORS, and there was so much trouble in ORS. There was a lot of internal conflict, and he said things getting really nasty because we can't take Brigadier Khumalo's leadership. It's toxic. I don't know what the actual complaint was, but Philip said the members were complaining about him. He said he called Advocate Björkman, who was then the chair of the committee, and he said they had a special meeting about it. Now, I don't know, that should be on record. Philip then told me, look, we decided to move him. We decided to move him because he wasn't the right person to head Operational Response, although I'm told subsequently that he wasn't actually moved. Structurally, he was Operational Response, but project managing for the task team. Philip also said, well, and some other people have told me this since then, he was apparently Operational Response in the KwaZulu police. Some people say he was a Caprivi trainee, but I have never verified that. You know, it's easy to make allegations like that. But he did apparently, and more than one person says that, he was obviously well trained or trained by the KwaZulu police in guarding, because he was guarding the king, King Zwelithini. And those of you old enough to remember, was that in the run-up to 1994, there was quite a few dramatic years that I could give you a whole day's story about how the king wanted to assert his independence, but he was being guarded night and day. So I guess Khumalo was part of that. Okay, then he was integrated into after 95, the KwaZulu and South African police were integrated. And one former intelligence operator, who's retired now, said to me, well, he was integrated and he did a bit of work with statistics and finance in crime intelligence, but he said he was never operational. And then he went back to Operational Response. So what I've heard is that from that time on, with one exception, he was Operational Response, but General Mkhwanazi is correct when he gave evidence to Nhlanhla that he moved him. You know, General Mkhwanazi was acting National Commissioner when Clearly was suspended. Former minister, whatever you want to call him, Minister Clearly, was suspended when he was National Commissioner. And Mkhwanazi had to jump a few places. He was so far behind. Everybody was saying, why is somebody so junior? Anyway, he moved Khumalo, a general brigadier then. I don't even know if he was a brigadier at that stage or later promoted. He moved him to crime intelligence. I was told by impeccable sources that his tenure in crime intelligence only lasted a few months because it was a financial scandal. And he was moved out, but the secretary was the one that apparently was fingered in the financial scandal. But I don't know. But he was definitely a few months only. He certainly didn't clean up time in crime intelligence. It was unclean enough for years, and then it got worse, I think, from what they tell me in the last 3 years. So that's all I know about General Khumalo, Dumisani Khumalo, that he had very little intelligence experience and was almost primarily operational response for all those years, apart from being a project manager for the task team, which should not involve investigations or intelligence.
According to your knowledge, does he have any detective experience?
No, nothing. I've never heard of any detective experience. I mean, I guess you get basic training of some sort. But look, to be fair, if he was trained in the SAP, the South African police, you see, you've got to remember that back in the early 90s when he would have trained, he may have trained in the South African police and moved to the KwaZulu police. Or he may have been trained, depending on when he joined. The KwaZulu Police was formed in 1987. The first commissioner was a notorious white security policeman, known for his work with Askaris. Okay, he was the first commissioner in 1987. Now, whether or not Khumalo, now General Khumalo, was trained by the police then, I think he may have been trained by the SA police. If it was before 1987, he may have been trained by the SA police and moved to the KwaZulu police because there was a lot of inducements to get members to move from the SA police to the KwaZulu police, and most of them did not want to. The incentives were quick promotions and all sorts of things. So I don't know at the training he had, that would have been, because the one thing about, with the black SAP, they had the same training as the white SAP, which was quite good in those days. It was just that they were treated completely differently and they didn't get promoted. Like, you know, in the mid-90s, some of them were coming to me and they were still sergeants. And he said, you know, I've been a sergeant for 20 years and that man was a general years ago, the white man that I trained with. So that was the way they discriminated. But as I said, the training was essentially pretty good for black police, that in the SA police, yeah.
Dr. de Haas, what qualifications would you require to serve on the PKTT?
You would need to be, okay, this is the way the task teams work that I know of, even when they were established by, you know, for specific purposes. That's the ones I had experience of in the 90s, working in the South Coast, Midlands, North Coast. At which stage, I should also mention, of course, because they do go back a long way, including with the former Minister Clearly, who was the ANC's person dealing with crime and policing before he became the MEC. So they would have known each other for a long time. And General Mkhwanazi himself was trained from the beginning with operational response. In those days, it was called the Stability Unit, but we all called it the Instability Unit. They're the ones that used to go in and raid the homes of the UDF or the ANC people and see if there were any weapons and move them, and then the vigilantes used to move in and attack them. And I think that I haven't checked back, I'm very familiar with Shobishibane. I also made a statement to the Shobishibane Commission, by the way. I mean, to the Commission on Police Conduct there, because I was I warned about Shobishibane. Okay, so they even went in, I think, and cleaned out Shobishibane before the vigilantes went in and massacred people. So they had a bad reputation, but they did probably good training in public order policing, it became afterwards. So, yeah, I think to answer your question, I don't think along the way that the only training General Khumalo might have had was basic detective training. So when it comes to task teams, there's a very clear structure. And this was in I think there's a sheet of it somewhere from the 90s. You have a person of a senior rank. Usually in those days it was, well, it's a colonel now because they remilitarized, but it was the equivalent of what is now a lieutenant colonel. And then you would have a captain, and then you would have, say, constables. There was very clear, they were much smaller units, but there was a very clear reporting line from constables to captain to the commander, to be a lieutenant colonel at least. So that's the way the task team works. They were short duration. They would deal with a problem for 2 years, say, and then they'd be disbanded. And they had successes. I mean, the one up the North Coast was stunning. They got high court convictions, and in those convictions, it showed that the people who were convicted were still getting helped by the police behind the scenes. They were working with people who were in Kata in the latter 90s to incite them to actually instruct, including at the home of a former minister, a former member of parliament called Bheki Ntuli, whom I have known for many years, a trade unionist who's now late. He lost family members in these attacks, and the investigator who'd been with the Goldstone Commission, Vilagazi, was stunningly good. He got convictions for some of those killings in that area. So they were very successful operating with that structure. Now, you ask about the task team. I mean, apart from the first being a brigadier, the brigadier soon left. I said to people who had experience of it, I've had a lot of names of people. They come, they go. I mean, one of them was a constable brought down from Pretoria to investigate these policemen in Umkomaas, and they wondered why he'd been a constable for 20 years. And the lawyer asked him, and he said, "Oh, I'm in a bit of a contestation at the moment with the police." And a person in the police who checked the records found out, oh, no, he hadn't been promoted because he was actually, he had a criminal record. But he was promoted while he was in the task team. I'm just giving that as an aside. Now, after the brigadier left, which was pretty early on, I've said to them, but who are these people who are supervising dockets? You know, you've got to have supervision of dockets by a senior police member. Oh, I think Dlamini told me this because he had basically worked in the team after there was, you know, and he was moved about the time the brigadier went, I think. He said, well, I think what happened is, he said, they've had a few lieutenant colonels come, but they go. And we've had a few captains come, maybe they're doing it. But there's been no, this is, I just want to explain, this is why I had a problem with this. There's no transparency. You can't evaluate because they don't give breakdowns of who these people are they say they've had successes with.
So, Dr. de Haas, so from paragraph 15 onwards on page 10, you discuss your request for the disbandment of the team, and you had initially complained to then Minister, that this is in 2024, to then Minister Nkunu, and you had also written to Parliament, and that the letter to, there was the letter of the 24th of October, which isn't part of the original bundle, but we have, Honourable Chair made copies available. And it is it's also at page 53 in volume 2 of the annexes, A call for the immediate disbandment of SAPS political killings task team.
This one. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, yes.
And the letter also to the Minister of the 13th of November 2024, which is in volume 1 at page 34, MDH6. So the one of may I refer to the first one on page 53 in volume 2, which is addressed to Minister Mkhwanazi, a call for the immediate disbandment.
Yes.
And in the you write in paragraph 1, this letter and its 3 appendices is to request that for reasons as set out fully below, you take urgent and appropriate action to deal with the abuses and gross wastage of personnel and financial resources by the irregularly constituted political killings task team. I request that you, 1, instruct the National Commissioner SAPS to immediately disband the irregularly constituted, unnecessary and wasteful political killings task team and send its investigators back to the detective units established provincially and nationally in terms of the SAPS legislation. The National Commissioner must immediately stop the deployment of General Nkhumalo, who heads Crime Intelligence, CIS, to this task team, which he did not have the qualifications and experience to command in the first place. Why has he been allowed to occupy these positions, for neither of which he has qualifications at the same time? And that was followed up with a November letter and then the directive of 31 December, which he got a copy, which we've now copied to the Honourable Committee. The Minister's directive deals with 3 separate items. The first is the filling of posts in the Intelligence Division. The second one, ports of entry. And the third one, political killings task team. Now, the Minister Mkhwanazi, when he gave evidence to the Honourable Committee, mentioned amongst others, he had about 5 or 6 other reasons, motive that informed his decision of 31 December. Your comment?
Well, I mean, I read very quickly through his the affidavit he made. I was particularly interested in what I could gather from the cases he mentioned, which are quite obscure still. But I think he had been, my recollection is that he had been through various procedures. I know there was a media report several months back that General Masemola had actually been told that we couldn't afford to, the country couldn't afford to keep this expensive unit going, and I think my role in this is to say it wasn't necessary because we had perfectly good provincial teams, which I have explained, I've given details to. And I had never in my life, in all the years I've kind of worked with police, we've often cooperated. I've put them in touch with people when they're investigating, including back in the 90s. And I have never in my life heard of a task team running around with members of National Intervention Unit. what the police do, if they have to go into an area they think might be dangerous, they sign for a rifle to take with them in case they come under attack. And here I was getting, I think the first one I heard that were national intervention was when they seized Thabiso Zulu's phones. And then I heard that regularly the National Intervention Unit is with them. Now, I can tell you, and this is one of my arguments, that at the moment we've got trucking mafias, we've got land and housing mafias invading land which is under interdict by armed men, and there's not a sign. There's no sign of a national intervention unit or a public order unit. And they're running around with the task team, staying in expensive hotels. I then was told that actually a member who was a captain and promoted to lieutenant colonel, who by the surname of Finn, who's named by people in the task team, is actually cooperating the unit with General Dumisani Khumalo. He's kind of one of the commanders. Now that means then that we have the only people with oversight of a detective team are the National Commissioner, the Provincial Commissioner, the seconded NIU person, and General Khumalo, who's also head of intelligence. Now, that means there's 4 people there who are operational response and not even detectives running a team. I mean, it's just crazy. Absolutely. I've never come across this before. So that was the story of, I did write that letter, yes, and I wrote the subsequent letters because I was horrified by what I was hearing, and I thought of the expense even then. I would hear, well, who's so-and-so? I'd ask a detective that used to work in the oh, I think he was with us and he's gone and he got promoted now. That's why he's now a colonel. But so I was getting reports from different people. When you put it together, it was all grossly irregular, plus my own experience of, as I said, the way they were running around. And I wasn't just told this by people who were accused, I was told it by families who'd seen them in court. And this year there was even a report, it's not in your bundle, I think, but after the disbandment, the national intervention was still in court for Dlamini's case, I think it was, and others. And they prevented family members from entering the court. I've got a whole lot of statements about it from them. So they were still running around. And that's why then after I sent the initial complaint, and I want to stress, I never thought the minister would act. I've never had ministers acting when I've asked them to do things before.
So just before we get there, Dr. Das, did Minister Mkhunu reply
No.
To your...
But the letters went through. He never responded. As far as I know, I never got even, but I did send them to his office and they didn't bounce back. So I was assuming that he had received them.
Now, while we talking about Minister Mkhunu, can you just reference from paragraph 24 on page 16 to 26 on page 17, any interaction, relationship, contact with Minister Mkhunu?
Yeah. I was asked to do this and I want to do it because people are saying it was me who drove it and wrote the letter, which is nonsense. Let me just explain my history. When I was interacting with a lot of ANC people in the early 90s because they wanted to know what was happening, Professor Zulu and I were still producing reports. I've mentioned to you there were specific people, but Senzo Mkhunu was not one of them. There was Willis Mkhunu, who was a trade unionist, who became the premier of the province, but not Senzo Mkhunu. I think at that stage, And the area he came from, he'd been under threat, I gathered, from, I was working very closely with Roy Ainsley, who was up the North Coast a lot. And he was doing the area that Senzo Mkhwanazi was in, and he was under threat. But it wasn't as badly as attacked as the areas I was working, which had a lot of trade unionists in. And he seems to have been in another role. I didn't deal with him then, but I probably met him at some stage. I remember a conversation I had with him in the 2004 elections when he had asked me to supply him with what was happening, problems at polling stations, because in those days, and it was very contested. That was the first election the ANC won in the province. And there was a lot of intimidation, were the police there? Were the police doing their jobs? I was phoning him and telling him, well, there's a problem at this station, that station. That was the conversation. He was quite grateful for it. He thanked me. And that's the only connection, the only conversation. I must have met him at some stage because I was always getting asked to do things like, opinions on traditional leadership and all sorts of things. And I must have met him. I probably met him when the ANC won the province. They had a huge gathering then. Paulus and I were at it. Shamila Batoy was at it. There were lots of people at it, and I probably met him then. And but I don't remember him specifically. But I had his phone number. I had his phone number in a book from years ago. I think a book from the 90s probably, or early 2000s. But when he was appointed minister, and I thought, well, I need to send him stuff now. I can't send it Clearly because Clearly was the one that was causing the problems. And I was writing to Parliament about it. And the president, I might have even written to the president at some stage about the problems, especially about Thabiso Zulu, because, of course, Clearly wouldn't give him protection. Anyway, but I then phoned somebody in the ANC and said, have you got Senzo Mkhwanazi's number? And he said, well, here it is. And I found out it was the same number I had in my notebook for many years ago. Okay, so I sent him a text message. Or it might have even been a WhatsApp, I can't remember. But I noticed that with his WhatsApps, he does turn on disappearing messages, so I can't remember what I sent. But I sent him a message, and I said, please, could you give me the number of your PA? I would like to send you copies of letters to the police. And he sent the number of his PA. I think she was called Mtembu. That was the only contact I had with him before I wrote the letters. And then after I wrote the letters, I had no contact with him until a month ago. What is it now? End of November? About a month ago, maybe a bit more. I got a call from one of the really good police that I've been working with for a few years. He's based nationally. And he has lots of information. He was in the police for a long time. He gets it. I've noticed a lot of these police get their colleagues' information. He knows a lot. He said, I really need to get hold of Minister Mkhwanazi. Can you let me know how to get hold of him? I said, well, I don't want to. I never give people's telephone numbers without their permission. He said, it's really urgent. He needs to know this. Okay, so I then phone Mkhwanazi. This is about a month ago or more. The line is bad. I'm not hearing him too well. I say, look, I have a policeman who wants to give you information. How should he do it? And he sent me the name in a message. He sent me the name of somebody that I could contact to give the information to, or put him in touch with this policeman. I did phone this. No, I think, I contacted this person. And I gave him the information, which he said he would pass to the minister. Now, I didn't know the man that I interacted with. So what I did was, to be on the safe side, I sent the information to Advocate Pekole, because I knew he wasn't, I presumed he wasn't anymore in the office of the minister, because there was a new minister by then. But I thought, well, at least he's a lawyer. He was a lawyer for Mkhwanazi, and then he would make sure he got hold of this police member. Anyway, I then heard from the police member that everything had worked out and he provided the information and he thought it might have been followed up. But that was out of my hands. I was just the messenger in that case. And I could assure my policeman contact was actually quite chuffed. He said, no, they've taken my evidence and I think they're following it up. Anyway.
You can't mention the person's name.
No, I certainly can't. I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. Look, I can't answer a question like this, and I'll tell you why. I work with a very strict code of ethics. You know, there's a whole history in social science, including under apartheid. The social scientists are used by governments for spying purposes. It was notorious, Operation Camelot in America. And as a result of that, the American anthropologists adopted a very strict code of conduct. I've had from him. And he asked me if I could provide him with a list of politically linked killings. He wanted it for a certain period. He said he wanted to check stuff he'd been given. I said, no, fine, you can have it. Those are not confidential. I mean, I give them to the media if they want them, you know. It's just a work in progress of what I think might be politically linked, which is the only way I can do it. And I mean, I've always said too, some of these I only hear about in the media, and some of them I've told by people who want to report them to me and they don't get in the media. So they're very incomplete.
When did you hear for the first time or know about the minister's decision, or Minister Mkhwanazi's decision?
It was on the 2nd of January. It was circulated in a policing WhatsApp group. There's a guy who was, and he may still be in intelligence, who runs a kind of network among police members. Now, I mean, I want to make it quite clear with this. I don't know who his sources are, but there are obviously some of them that know what's going on, because what he's passed on is stuff I know independently. And sometimes they pass on official circulars, like there's the huge budget shortage. They'll pass on, there was a huge budget shortage early this year, and it coincided with there being no money for petrol to take exhibits. There was no money for food for prisoners at some of the stations, for toilet rolls. There was no money for stationery more recently. And police among themselves were saying, oh, I suppose it's going to the political killings team. Anyway, so it was this group which was passing on, but also other police. For example, there's a couple of retired police who sent me stuff because they're still hearing from colleagues, some of them quite senior, that I worked with years ago, and I know they're okay. So it's different types of... I was amazed. I was astonished.
Honorable Skosana, I saw your hand was up.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm a bit concerned. You know, the witness says to us that she can't name people, you know, and I would say normally that's News 24. Some of the journalists are doing exactly what she's doing here. Some of the names are named here. There's names which he named here as well. Now, I'm not sure if the witness is protecting, because he made a guarantee to those ones who gave him information. But to some of us, it's like we are gossiping here. For me, honestly speaking, it's like we are gossiping. We're going to go out of here not knowing who are we talking about here. And for me, it's disappointing, Chair. That our witness she's not prepared. And she's making very clear to us that she's not going to tell us the names. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Matthews. Okay, Honorable Shongwe.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think Prof Mary should either refrain from giving us information without names, because nameless information cannot assist us anyhow. Where are we going to go with that information to? Who are we going to confront with that information? So maybe for her sake, she can just put the nameless information on the side and give us information with names if she's not going to give us names. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Nhlanhla.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I've noticed that in the evidence of the witness before us is largely reliant to secondary or third sources. So it's largely on information that which the witness has received from someone or some people or this and that. So it is worrying, Chair, that the witness is not willing to reveal the sources, because how do we then put value to the evidence that is accused before us, and how do we then verify if that which has been testified before us is actually true or false? So it gets worried when the witness is refusing to reveal from whom did the witness get that kind of information. You know, Chair, we have long discussed the issue of names since the first witness, and we will implore with the witness to share with us as much information as she can, because if she doesn't, it means, therefore, as Honorable Skosana says, we are busy here gossiping. Because the statement of the witness is largely reliant on secondary sources. Thank you.
May I respond? I answered a question about my contact with Mkhwanazi, and I had to explain how it happened It happened. I cannot reveal a source of somebody who might get killed for telling me. I mean, this is an ethical problem, basically. I have to give people my word that I will not reveal it. When it comes, most of what I've told you, I've heard directly from people about the abuses. The prisoners themselves have managed to send emails from prison. Sometimes you can talk to them on the phone. I've spoken to people. This is first-hand information. All the names I'm mentioning are already on record. Now, if, for example, the General Mkhwanazi or General Khumalo come along and talk about, well, this is what we're doing, they're getting that information from informants, perhaps. They're not telling you the informants' names. The informants would be killed. It's the way I've been doing this. It was part of my training as a social worker. I had to take an oath of confidentiality when I was still a student. I have worked with this for years that I do not, people know they can trust me. So most of the evidence is people that are already, I'm talking about people that are already named in the media, people who've given evidence. The only names I'm with, I got that letter. You asked how I got the letter. I got it, and it's a letter that we all know exists. I didn't manufacture that letter. And I have made a point elsewhere in this affidavit. only because I was specifically asked to comment about links with intelligence, that not only does the information, some of these allegations I cannot. I'm making it very clear. Because I'm seeing reports in the media, stunning revelations. These are not revelations, they're allegations until they're examined. And these people, a lot of people are just dying to give their first-hand evidence to the Nhlanhla Commission. And there's a clause for secrecy in giving evidence.
Honorable James will be followed by Honorable Nomvalo and then Honorable Matthys, in that order. I think they are still not satisfied, Prof. Doctor, on the responses that you are giving.
Okay. This is not a storytelling environment. This is not a history class taking us back to the 1980s. Our communities are under siege. Our children are being fed drugs. We are here to get to the truth. Ethics has long left this room and left this country. Long time ago. It's too late for that now. We need names. Anyone that comes here today, we don't know you. You said earlier on, Professor, my people trust me. I don't know you. I don't trust anyone. So please, can we have names here today? And when you get asked a question, Chair, I find that the witness sometimes will get asked a simple question. How did you learn of the letter? And then we must hear about groups where stationery and fuelis complaints are being received. Please, can we stick to the question? Can we give a frank, honest answer? And can we move on and can we get names? We've been listening to this all morning and we've been patient with the witness, but I think time is moving. We don't have a lot of time. Can we please get to the bottom of this now?
Yeah, not before. Honorable James. Honorable James. What is it that let's be specific so that we are able to help the meeting to move forward.
Chair, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
When the witness was asked, how did she learn of the letter? She answered, she said, via a WhatsApp group, a police WhatsApp group, and members have also been complaining about fuel and about petrol and all of that stuff. The entire morning, whenever she speaks and she speaks about her sources, she doesn't reference the name. It's just, she's unable to verify. When she speaks about crime intelligence leader and head of crime intelligence, there's provincial, there's national. She's not specific with names I've picked up. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in her statement. And I think out of respect and sort of one looks, at a lot of things, so you don't want to be too hard, but it's been going on the entire morning. And there's a lot being said here where I can see we're being patient, the evidence leader's being patient with her, but she's not getting to the point, and we are getting derailed.
Okay. Did you note the question?
I did indeed. Well, I wouldn't have come here if I'd known that I couldn't withhold people's names for ethical reasons, but they might get...
Dr. De Haas, did you note the question?
I heard the question about needing to know the name. Indeed, I did. Yeah.
Note that question. We are coming later.
May I explain?
Honorable Nomvalo.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I think the first thing that we need to, as a basic necessity that we need to protect in this house is the decorum. That is number one. When members have asked for an opportunity to make inputs during the course of her testimony, she must wait for the chair after we have spoken, for the chair to give a directive. You don't budge here, Coco. You wait for the guidance of the chairperson, and thereafter you come in, because here we are engaging so that ultimately the chair would give a direction based on the engagements that we have tendered here in a meeting. Secondly, people who have been coming to this committee, including people who are in the higher echelons of the state, have been mentioning names of serious people who occupy serious positions. So we don't understand this story that we are being told here, because
it means we are subjected to hearsay. And hearsay is evidence whose credibility relies on another person other than the person who's giving testimony. So it means here you are giving us information whose credibility relies on another person. And this is a fact-finding mission. So if you come with a cold and a silent evidence, how is it going to help us as this committee? Because you give us evidence, we analyze, we dissect, and if there are names in it, we take it further by inviting those people whom you have mentioned in your testimony. So really, Chair, we can't allow to be subjected to gossips. We have no time for gossiping here. We want to deal with real evidence. She must tender real evidence. And if she has nothing to say, she must keep quiet. Thank you very much.
Honorable Matthys.
Thank you, Chair. We asked Professor Mary to be here based on the testimony of the minister. And most of his statement, he submitted the whole report, so her complaint letter. So she's here because a minister told us that one of his decisions on making, or his main decision on why the PKTT was disbanded was because of a complaint that was sent by Professor Mary. So I think that is one of the main reasons that we must have in the fore of our heads on why Professor Mary is here before us. The second issue, Prof, I think you have to also appreciate there's a difference between anthropology, ethics, and also what we are doing here. It's justice. So while we understand, you'd rather not tell us a story if we are not going to have names that are going to be attached. And you can't talk while I'm talking. So let's just take a chill pill a little bit. And it's fine if you don't want to give names. We do understand we are in a very hostile environment and people are being killed. We'd rather not hear the story because it makes us difficult for us to do our jobs as members of parliament. And you can't also roll your eyes while we are talking. We need you, or maybe we must be told, how do we process information on so-and-so said this, there's someone lying in prison, I can't tell names. How do we process it? Maybe that's something that we can do, or you need to tell us, because we are here, we need facts, we need to process information. As my colleague said, there are witnesses that we need to come. We'd rather not hear the story if we are not able to verify that information, because as members of parliament, we are here to execute justice, we are here to do an inquiry. So we need that. If you cannot tell us, give us a name, don't tell us the story. And I'm asking that we do that. And maybe we should also just, I just try to wrap up. And I mean, I do appreciate that people can be killed and we're going through a very hostile time, but we also can't just listen to stories and there's no way of us being able to verify that information. Thank you.
Honorable Sols.
Chair, I would just urge us as a committee to maintain equal and fair treatment to all witnesses. The terms of reference doesn't say if you don't give names, you must not tell the story. It gives an option to share a name in camera. You can share it in an enclosed setting. So let's treat all witnesses the same. If may I finish? So what I'm saying, Chair, is...
Honorable Sols, with due respect, let's take the point of order. I will come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. On a point of order, Honorable Sols always does this. So now he's trying to say that we are treating witnesses unfairly. No one said that the witness cannot do in camera. So why doesn't he just come here and say, if the witness cannot say names, she must say it in camera. It's simple like that. Don't come here and always undermine us. And it's so unnecessary. And you hold us back here in the committee because you are unnecessary, Honorable Sols. Just say, let the minister, let the witness do it in camera. There's no problem. Don't throw shade at us and say we're treating witnesses unfairly. It's unnecessary. You are always doing this in the committee and you hold us back as a committee of trying to be progressive. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I will rule on that later. May you conclude your point, Honorable Sols.
Thank you, Chair. I was merely responding to what was stated. The statement that was made was, if you're not going to give names, then don't tell the story. I'm saying we shouldn't do that. We should say, here's the options. We require names. You have the option. If you want to protect your sources, you can, in terms of our terms of reference, say it in an enclosed manner in camera. And then the other names that you can state publicly, you can state it here. That's all I'm saying, Chair. Let us state it in that way. Let's not tell witnesses if you don't want to say names, then don't tell us the story. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, let me do this, honorable members. First of all, let me address you as honorable members. And then the next will be to talk to Professor de Haas. Honorable Sols, you would remember that in the last proceedings, the second last proceedings, when we listened to Advocate Batoy, we had a similar arrangement where we agreed that if there were names that were to be mentioned, we will arrange an in-camera session where where that information will be provided to the committee. And you are very right when you say we must be consistent. And secondly, I want to request Honorable Matthys to attack the facts and not the person. If there is something that Honorable Sols says, let's address ourselves to the facts that he presents or the view that he propagates than to attack him as a person. Because once you say this is what he always does, I think it's ad hominem. You are now, you know, there is this, there was one coach who had a philosophy in football that if you can't dispossess the opponent, you must make sure that there is no procession. The ball must not move forward, and the opponent must also not succeed to move forward. So you must destroy both. So I think I will not agree with the point of order that you have raised, Honorable Matthys. And then Dr. de Haas, when I listen to these members and when I look at you, I can see that you are a citizen of an advanced age. And then these members are saying to you that they want to respect you as a senior citizen in this country. And there is no there is no intention on their part to be seen disrespecting you or harassing you in recognition of your social status in society and their socialization from where they come from. They come from communities where they have been taught to respect elders. And it will be an ugly spectacle before the eyes of the people of South Africa if you were to be, or all of us here were to be seen on television with a senior citizen like yourself. And the message that may go out there is that those young members of parliament are uncultured. They don't know how to conduct themselves towards the senior citizens of this country. And there may even be an association or any interest group or any citizen acting on behalf of the interest of the elderly, who may end up writing to us and say, you invited Dr. de Haas to Parliament, but we don't think that the manner in which you treated her accords a citizen of that social status. So we're cognizant of all that. And we also want to very much admire you for your academic accomplishments. The least we request from you is to go back to the oath that we administered this morning to say, and very respectfully so, if there is any question that is put to you, try your utmost best to respond to it satisfactorily. And that is why sometimes if you observe sitting where I'm sitting, I always check with the members if they are satisfied after asking a question or a follow-up. So where it may be difficult for you to mention a name, you can say, Chairperson, let me, and especially when the day is still so young like this, because if we need to have in-camera proceedings, we must make an application because Parliament is for the people. You don't just decide now and say, after this meeting, we will have a meeting in camera. If there are names, something that you may have to do upfront and say, in my statement, there is some confidential information that I would gladly like to share with you. But it may not be possible for me to publicly say it in the following paragraphs. So at the end of this proceedings, Chair, you can please favor me with at least 5 or 10 minutes, and I can disclose those details to you. Yeah, I think I have tried to say it in a manner that that brokers peace, in a manner that helps these proceedings to move forward. I'm always saying that when we conduct ourselves, we must not be worried about the technicalities of our arguments and our presentations. What the people of South Africa want to see is the wisdom behind our actions and the statements that we make. Thank you so much. May you please respond to the questions that the honorable members have asked.
Certainly. And I mean, there's very few names I haven't mentioned. I mean, when they're names of police, I can't mention them because they will be persecuted and lose their jobs. They may lose their lives. Let me explain. And it's one of the reasons why I am outraged that we should have a team that focus on a few dozen people that may or may not have been killed for political reasons. I sit in a province, I myself have found myself under surveillance. I have just had to debug my phone without a court order. The phone, my calls were all getting diverted. I have to watch every move I make because I've made a lot of enemies. This is me. And I don't care about my age. I mean, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mr. Honourable Chair. It's very nice of you. I'm used to robust debates. I really don't mind. But I also need to explain, I see dreadful stuff all the time, not just for politicians. I see people dying and the police doing nothing. And yet we're spending this money on this team. I think it's outrageous, quite frankly, when ordinary people can't get justice, they want closure, they don't get it. I'm speaking here for poor people. You don't even hear about them being killed. They're killed all the time in rural areas. They're trying to defend their land, for example. No one's paying attention and doing anything special for them. Why are we doing something special for politicians? Okay, I've had my say about that. It's in my affidavit that this is one of the reasons I think, why on earth should we now focus on politicians? I mean, there's relatively few people whose names I have not mentioned. I mean, I didn't mention the name of the person I passed the information to, the policeman, because I can't do it without checking if that's okay. But there's another reason here. I mean, it doesn't interfere much with all these people I'm talking about. I mean, I've spoken to them personally, and they also want to go to the Nhlanhla Commission. They want to go and tell their stories to the Nhlanhla. This brings me, before I was contacted by Parliament, when the Nhlanhla Commission was set up, they reached out to me. The Commission reached out to me. I have sent a great deal of information to the Commission. The Commission will contact me through its investigators when they're finished with the process in place now, with Nhlanhla or whatever else. Okay, they have a team headed by a forensic person, and those are the people that will do the investigations. I appreciate what Parliament is doing. As I said, I've been trying to ask Parliament this for years, to follow up on the complaints about policing and about even the task team. So I appreciate this move. I appreciate your asking me, but if you had said to me, we're going to insist, you must remember, I mean, even I know, I'm not a lawyer, but even I know that you have the right to remain silent in court, even if you're an accused, and I assume I'm not being accused. So I cannot, this is built into me. It's required by an international association of human rights defenders that I'm affiliated with, Frontline Defenders. You take every step to protect anyone who's vulnerable. And people who give me information that might lose their jobs or their lives by my giving a name are vulnerable. So I would just have to say thank you very much, but I cannot carry on, because don't forget that at this stage we have the Nhlanhla Commission with specialist investigators. They can check out whether what I'm saying, they can talk to people firsthand. And as I've said to you, people are dying to talk to the Nhlanhla Commission when they get as far as looking at the task team. So, as I said, I came here because I was invited and I thought it was the right thing to do. I gave the answer to this question in saying, I can't tell you the name of the person who wanted to contact Mkhwanazi, because I was asked to give any information I had, which I have done truthfully, about my contact with Mkhwanazi, with Cedric Ngabindi, with Sabia, and with